Today, I'm here to talk about embedding CliftonStrengths into an organization of all sizes. And I'd really like to leave you with, 3 key tips on how you overcome some of the most common challenges that we see when coaches and leaders look to embed CliftonStrengths into an organization. So let's start with the challenge of initiating. Where do we begin? The number one strategy that I lean into and have seen success with is to work with the willing. So if you think about it, as we're building momentum, we're wanting to find places where we can succeed, places where we can learn, places where we can maybe identify what works and what doesn't work, so that we can continue to broaden involvement and expose the strengths-based philosophy even farther in the organization. So, think about your organization. Is there a leader and a team who's particularly passionate about this? Maybe it starts small, just on an intact team. Is there a department where there seems to be some energy and you want to start inside IT, perhaps, or you want to start inside marketing? So is there a department where there's some energy and enthusiasm for this work, where you could build momentum? Is there maybe a specific region? So in some global organizations I've worked with, we've started in APAC because that's really been where the hunger is. And as we've been able to demonstrate value in APAC, it moves along to EMEA and the Americas. So again, whether you're starting small and working with the willing, whether it's just one team or a couple teams, expanding to a department or an entire region, I think you really want to find those places where there's already leadership support and buy-in, where there's a need, and where people are willing to be a partner to you in this pilot process. The opportunity to pilot and learn is a really powerful way to embed this, because you can have a lot of insights and learnings along the way that help address those other challenges later on around sustaining momentum and embedding in the culture. So again, as I think about how we embed this approach in a culture, when you change culture, when you start to change conversations. And so I'd say focus on changing the nature of conversations and bringing this strengths-based approach to life in a small place to begin with. And then as you have insights and build champions and advocates in that group, continue to expand. We're playing the long game here. It doesn't have to be everything at once. The second challenge is really around sustaining momentum. When I think about creating change, what are we asking people to do differently? We are often disrupting habits and norms in the ways that people operate. And that's going to be true as we embed a CliftonStrengths development approach into an organization. And when you ask people to change their habits and ways of operating, that takes energy. We're kind of fighting inertia. And so I start to think about what are the ways that we might sustain that energy that it takes to really fight inertia for the long run. An important way, and this is the second strategy, to sustain momentum is to be able to track and measure successes along the way, right? When we see the improvements happening, when we're able to celebrate those wins, that gives us the energy to keep going. And so you want to demonstrate wins early and often so that people recognize that the change is even taking place. There's always going to be a gap between the start of the change and the impact of the change. But you'll see individual results before organizational results. So I think one of the mistakes we make sometimes is we wait to see the organizational results, the organizational improvements. Maybe we're improving engagement or development or trying to improve performance outcomes by bringing a strengths-based approach to life. But if we wait for the organizational results, which are often kind of lagging indicators, we might lose the energy that we've been building. So my strategy is to really focus on how do you demonstrate individual and team results early and often? How can you track and measure the successes that people are having in those smaller groups? Because they're going to happen faster. And by seeing them and recognizing them, you sustain that momentum. So how might you do that? Well, 2 quick examples. Individual development plans can be a really powerful strategy here to track individual successes. We often are starting with a strengths-based approach by knowing ourselves, being able to name, claim, and aim our own talents. And you can see wins when you ask those individuals who are experiencing this approach to write down their individual development plan. And then what's the change they see in a month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. These are individual success stories, but they're really powerful in storytelling, and they're really powerful in helping people see their successes that allows us to amplify those successes across the organization. So individual development plans and then seeing the improvement over time at that individual level is amazing. Another example that you can use for both individual and even team change is consider even using a pulse survey of some sort. What are the behaviors we expect to see change over time? And then can we track that through some sort of survey pulse mechanism? In fact, Gallup has a strengths orientation index that you could use and consider pulsing that to see how this philosophy is becoming embedded in the team. Those questions are things like, every week I set goals and expectations based on my strengths. I can name the strengths of 5 people I work with. In the last 3 months, my supervisor and I have had a meaningful discussion about my strengths, and my organization is committed to building the strengths of each associate. Right? So we could track progress against items like that over time to see how well we are embedding the strengths-based approach onto teams. In summary, again, rather than waiting to see organizational performance results as we bring a strengths-based philosophy to life in an organization, seek to find ways that you can track and celebrate individual and team results, because they'll surface faster, and that's our goal, is to see these results and continue sustaining that momentum over time. Okay, third and final challenge was the one around embedding and integrating strengths into our culture. If culture is made up by the types of conversations that we have every day, then not only do we need to teach people how to have those conversations, but we also need to look at the organization as an ecosystem and see where else we can embed and support these new behaviors and ways of working. And I think there's 2 key ways you can do that, and it's kind of R squared: recognition and reinforcement. So, again, we want to recognize and reinforce the markers of a strengths-based culture as a way to continue to embed it and integrate. When it comes to recognition, if you're already tracking those individual development plans and successes, tell those stories. Celebrate successes in storytelling. Celebrate people's strengths in the stories you tell. We model the behaviors of the people who are held up in an organization. So who are your heroes in the organization? And can you make sure that, as you're celebrating people, you're connecting their greatest performance outcomes to their greatest, people outcomes, who they are and how they're hardwired. Look at existing recognition events or awards and ensure that you're connecting the strengths of people to the behaviors that led to their success. I think that's a really powerful way to embed this. When it comes to reinforcement, I think about all the different systems and processes that we can reinforce what people do and how people show up in the workplace. That means looking at your performance development approach. Are we talking about strengths in our progress review conversations? Are we, helping to position people smartly and thinking about that when we're having performance coaching conversations? Who are you promoting? Are you promoting people who live out this approach and are really great builders of the strengths of those around them? You might even think about your onboarding, right? How do we reinforce this as part of our onboarding? And when we introduce someone to the organization, we help them understand that we're a strengths-based organization and what that means. So again, when it comes to embedding and integrating, think about how you recognize the folks who are bringing the strengths-based culture to life, and think about how you reinforce all of those behaviors throughout the total employee experience. So again, those are, a strategy for each of those key challenges that I've seen a lot of organizations face when it comes to initiating the strengths-based culture, sustaining the momentum to build the strengths-based culture, and embedding and integrating for the strengths-based culture.